Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues with Bonnie Violet.
And Lulu.
Each week, we provide and create a brave space where we engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
Of course, and our intention is to inspire better spaces for more people in recovery.
By tackling topics used to separate us. Oops.
I know exactly. I was going to share this to my platform. So, how are you doing?
We told them to do it. We should, practice what we preach, huh?
Absolutely, exactly. Making sure. So, it's like definitely make sure that you share, you like, and hit subscribe.
Yeah, I know, right? We just did like a mock of that, and I was like, we already said that.
I know. I know. Well, you can't say it enough. I mean, it's like we want to reach it. We want to reach the people.
Right. So share, share, share.
Yeah. So what's really cool is like the weather's really nice here in San Francisco, and I was. Yeah, and one of the nice things about here at the CCC, we have the steps, and a lot of times you pass by if you're in Castro on a regular day, you can see people up and down the steps, kind of chilling, relaxing, fellowshipping, connecting. And I looked out there, and even with COVID and restrictions, there's still some people like spread out, of course, and being mindful. But I had that feeling of that fellowship, that connection.
Yeah, that's been really challenging to like really connect with. Zoom and all those sorts of things are great, but being in person with one another is a whole other thing. And then I think just seeing familiar things, and there's like some nostalgia that's really great to kind of connect with as well.
Absolutely, and now that a lot of us are vaccinated, we're able to kind of,
Right.
Yeah, so that is extremely helpful. So how's your week been?
My week's been pretty good. Last week I was like in bed and not well most of the week, which was no fun. But like since Friday, I've been just like really excited. A lot of my projects just ended, and like this is kind of the only thing I'm doing at the moment, so it's super cute. Just have some little downtime to catch my breath, I guess, which has been really nice.
Wonderful. Dive in head first. If you don't know, Miss Bonnie Violet is an internet sensation,
or something like that.
Or something.
She just keeps real busy and puts herself out there a whole lot.
Absolutely. So for me, it's like I have been doing this exercise thing, and my trainer and I, we've been treating it kind of like my recovery, where I'm a Virgo, and so give me some assignments, and I've been taking the assignments. We're going slow, and one of the, we do a training session on Tuesday morning, but I received an assignment of just like going to the gym and doing a variety of exercises that are kind of like the treadmill, the basic ones, just really kind of working on cardio, and not going in and trying to do more than I need to, which is giving me a lot, helping me with my confidence in the area.
Right.
Because I figure that, I need to just forgive myself, allow myself to kind of be patient, and not be so caught up with like the end product, but just what's going on now.
Yeah, and it takes some time to get into a new groove. Whenever you do anything new, it takes some time to, I don't know, get moving.
Stella got her groove back,
right?
Yeah.
How did she?
I don't know.
Let's watch the movie, huh?
Yeah, no, it's probably a good time to watch that movie again. A little plug for my girl Angela Bassett.
Right.
The weather's just really nice in the city, so it's like I'd rather be out and about in it. So, we ready to talk about why we're here today?
Yeah, so we're talking about mental health. Yay!
Absolutely, I know.
Yay, mental health!
Woohoo! Exactly.
Really great topic.
Well, it's something we all have. Hopefully, it's you're on the better end of it.
Yeah. Well, it's and that's the thing. It's like I know for me, there's been times in my life when like it's like if I need to be doing something for my mental health, that somehow that's like, I think I said this before, but like I like because there's such a stigma, or because I put such a belief on it, like the idea when I was able to get out of mental health care at one point in time, and then I found myself where I needed to go back to it some more. I definitely had like a hard time kind of like realizing that it was just something I needed. It wasn't about me going backwards or me like there was nothing for me to be scared of. It was just me, my way of continuing to grow.
Absolutely, and I think that something that we get to pay attention to is the negative kind of connection, like the stigma that goes with even the words mental health. If I say mental health, I'm not talking specifically about anything other than, a snapshot of how I am, how I am in this moment.
How's our head?
Exactly. How's my head? How's my heart? Is everything tuned up? And everything in sync?
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for our guest this evening.
I am as well.
Me too. I'm super excited. Tonight we are welcoming Zachary Davenport, also known as LayBelline. Zachary is an LMFT. He's a queer, non-binary psychotherapist specializing in community mental health for the LGBTQQIA individuals, people living with HIV, and people who use drugs. Zachary's own struggles with mental health, addiction, and trauma became their greatest assets, and they are the foundation of their clinical practice. Zachary is the co-founder, creator, and inaugural host of our own Castro Country Club's monthly drag show fundraiser and the Miss Castro Country Club drag show and annual pageant. So without further ado, let's welcome Zachary to the show.
Hey, Zachary.
Hi. I'm all right. Do you all hear that buzzing sound? Listen, I don't know how to stop it. It just started.
I don't hear it.
I don't hear it.
Oh, you don't? Okay, well, it'll just keep going.
And what did you call them? An LMFT? What is that?
LMFT is Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist. So it is. It's a license that you get after you've done 3,000 hours of training and in different categories, and then you can practice, by yourself. You don't have to work under anyone anymore. So that's I went to school for that, and I don't really work with married couples, but that's what my license is called. So.
We can't hear you, so just one sec.
Okay.
It's interesting. The last week, so Zachary was talking about the buzzing, and last week Fonda was talking about the police car, the sirens. It's like, hey, it's the way we start.
Right, it just comes with the territory. Do you want to try speaking again, Zachary?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. They're speaking and we hear nothing.
So we're the goal for today was just to have a conversation about mental health, and we'll definitely try to get back once our technical difficulties are over. But have a conversation around like the importance of us acknowledging that we hold on.
It sounds like they're having some sound stuff in the chat.
It's very strange because none of us hear it.
Yeah, we don't hear anything here.
Exactly. So we were talking about the stigma around like mental health and like for me, what was really important, like I went into acceptance plates, and one of the responsibilities to get into treatment or therapy was to be able to go and have an assessment. And initially I was like, oh no, I don't have a problem. But I think that anybody who goes through the trauma of recovery, not recovery, of addiction of any sort, has definitely have work to do with regards to their own mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that a big part of talking about it is kind of taking away the negativity,
To kind of normalize it?
yeah, to normalize it, exactly.
Yeah. We can see them again, are they?
In the meantime, it's like I want to give a shout out to Ben and Jorge, who's one of Zachary's BFFs for over 20 years, and I see Jonathan and Calvin and Michael and Joey. I love it.
Glad you all could join us. Oh, I heard them giggle.
I think it stopped. The sound stopped.
Oh my God,
Yay.
look at us. It's like, you know what? Thank you for being on this ride with us because
Of
we're
course.
still pretty new. We're gonna figure this out, but we're gonna do it together.
Yes.
It's the joys of being live.
Yes.
Oh, right on. Joey says he hears me. Thank you.
Awesome. I think it's working. There was a sigh, so I didn't know how to take that. Looks like things are going that way. But we really loved your message last week that you sent us on the Speak Pipe. And so I'm really excited to have you. And I know you were here last week, or you got to listen to Fonda Cox. And
Yes.
one of the things, I'm like just going to dive right in there, but one of the things that I was, like I was feeling like, oh, I don't know anything about like body stuff. And like I was feeling like a little out of my element. And in reflection, the reason why that is because I learned to disassociate and I learned to like not be in my body at a very young age. And I don't think I've spent most of my life in my body. I really feel like since I've been able to accept myself as a trans person, I've been in my body a little bit more and I've been experiencing new things, but I was just realizing that. So I guess, what do you think about that?
I totally hear you, Bonnie, and relate with that. I think, I don't know if you relate with this, but I think disassociating for me was like a survival mechanism. If I could leave my body, I didn't have to be in the present of what was essentially the trauma that was happening around me or directed at me. So I think it's a survival thing that a lot of us, learn. And on the one hand, it's like it helps us survive, but then it has a lot of consequences that we don't even, realize that we're disconnected. We're disconnected from ourselves, from our own bodies,
And
so, yeah.
is association, is that like your, I guess, escaping into your head? Can you explain that a little bit, maybe for folks who haven't experienced it?
Can you say a little more, like about your question, like escaping into your head?
I guess for me, because I don't think I've ever had like a professional say, you disassociated. I just feel like I've had an experience where I'm not really in my body. And it's like I'm spending most of my time in like my head or some other place. Like there's been moments when I realized, even like sexually or whatever, that I would realize that I'm actually not with my whole body.
Yeah, the checking out. I think it's specific to like active like addiction. The reason why we use what we and do what we do because we don't like the way we're feeling and we don't want to feel it. And I know my experience is I was looking to be numb. I didn't want to feel. I didn't have the bandwidth to feel what I was feeling. And so
yeah.
Let me ask you. So for you, a licensed therapist, like how do you deal? I mean, we were talking before, and I was going to ask you because it's like I know coming from like a background in nonprofit or whatever. At the time I was there, I didn't understand the importance of self-care and how important it was to have a healthy mental kind of picture. So how do you deal?
It's a really good question. It's one day at a time, just like we say in recovery. I think that, a lot of people in helping professions, which are, there's so many helping professions in this world. We go into the work because it's just a natural drive and desire to help people, which is great. And then the flip side of that is sometimes we're so focused on helping other people that we forget to take care of ourselves. And the cliche, you can't take care of anybody else unless you take care of yourself first. It's very true. So, I mean, I'm kind of like dealing with it right now with my work, you know, just really needing to set boundaries for myself, like to just get up out of my chair and like go for a walk, like these little things that I just, you know, I just don't allow myself to do sometimes because I have these unrealistic, you know, expectations of myself. Nobody else really has them of me. It's like me, somehow I develop them. So, you know, it's also a really interesting, I mean, this is the topic of therapists talking about their own mental health is, I think, a really interesting topic. And like, we don't do it a lot with each other. It's kind of like, it's like an extra stigma. Like, you're not really supposed to divulge that, like, you have your own mental health stuff. And, but I think the reason that most of us go into this work is because we have experienced it. And that certainly is my story in a way. You know, the precipice to me deciding or kind of having this awakening that I was going to go to school to pursue becoming a therapist was I actually had this traumatic event happen where I was attacked here actually on Church and Market in 2010. And I was in therapy after that, dealing with PTSD and talking to my therapist. And I just started asking them questions about, like, how did you become a therapist and what drew you to it? And then it all just kind of started coming together. And of course, I had my own ideas about what I thought a therapist's life looked like. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of this fantasy of what I don't know what I thought, but it wasn't until I was maybe like a year into grad school that I was like, oh, this is what what being a therapist is about, and it's completely different than what I thought. You know, it's so complex. The learning is never ending. Because every person is different. Every person has their own story. There's no one size fits all like diagnosis for any one person. So yeah, I go to therapy still every week. I also, you know, have my own recovery program that I have to stay active in, and it's like a full-time job. Yeah.
And and then I'm assuming, do you then also have somebody that you, like an advisor, if you will, or somebody that's more like work related versus personal, like as well as like unpacking things or
yes,
that sort of thing?
Yeah, I have a clinical director, supervisor, and that I can consult with, and then really a team of people and I think that is so important in mental health. Really, it works best when there is a team approach, when there's team support, because we all come from different points of view, different orientations, and sometimes someone, you know, that maybe I'm like, I don't know if I would ever like take that person's advice. They actually may say something that I'm like, oh wow, like I never would have thought of that like resource or that approach. So yeah, many minds are better.
Yeah.
Hey, in recovery, so the thing that like I could imagine would be a little bit challenging for you is you probably encounter a lot of people who maybe could benefit from therapy and what have you. And how do you have a way that you can approach a person, or you can, like, some people don't pay attention to red flags, but do you have a way that you can communicate to encourage folks to kind of maybe move in that direction? You know, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, because I think obviously maybe you rely on a lot of folks who like they know it's what they need and they go towards it, but there
Mhm.
might, especially when you have this relationship with whatever recovery, and yeah, it's a helpless issue. But do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like people that maybe don't aren't really even thinking yet about seeking mental health support,
Yeah.
um, how to kind of introduce that to them. I mean, I think in some ways it is similar to like recovery and introducing that to someone who is maybe in what so in substance use treatment or even in mental health, like we talk about this model called stages of change, right? And we all go through all the stages of change anytime we make a change in our life. And so the first one is really pre-contemplation. So like what you're talking about, Lewis, is like somebody that's in pre-contemplation. They don't even realize that there's a problem. Everyone else knows usually, but they don't know yet. They're just they're in the behavior, the action, whatever it is. So one of the best things we can do is first accept that is where that person is at. Acceptance has to come first. Like we have to accept that person, let them know that we're there, that we accept them for where they're at, but we also then need to introduce that there is a solution, right? There is a possibility to change. One of the best ways we can do that is by sharing our own experience. So maybe having a conversation with somebody instead of starting out saying like, hey, like, I think you need to, call this number, or I really think you need to get in to see a therapist. Starting the conversation like, hey, like, I've been seeing you, and like, I just want you to know, like, I really relate. I've been where, kind of where you are. And, if you ever want to talk about it, or, some of the things that have worked for me is like, I started seeing a therapist, and this is how I went about that. I think a lot of times too, people just do not even know how to access mental health resources because the reality is we have a broken system. We have like a broken healthcare system, and mental health services is dictated by economics. It's dictated by your income, and that dictates what services you get access to. And so people need help with the navigation piece a lot. Like, okay, you have Medi-Cal. This is how we're going to get you connected. Okay, you have private insurance. This is how we're going to help you get connected, right? And there is an avenue for every person, but trying to do that on your own when you're in a mental health crisis of some sort, it's not going to happen, right? It's like it's impossible. So offering people support from a compassionate place of acceptance is like the best starting point.
And how does one discern if they're having something that they need more support in recovery in versus maybe mental health support? Can you share maybe how that might be different?
Yeah, it's a complex answer. I mean, I think so. Much of the time, right? If I mean, I personally feel, and I think there's a lot of folks that would agree that, like, and that substance use is but a symptom. It's actually a thing that we use to cope with the greater problem, which is possibly mental health, which is trauma, which is mental health as well. And so it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, like substance use first or mental health first. I think they need to be looked at simultaneously, because if you just treat one or the other, you're not treating the whole person.
Yeah.
So I think going to see like whether that's a substance use counselor or a therapist or psychologist, or even your PCP, your doctor, and talking to them about this, like, I think they will do an assessment and kind of help you figure it out. Sometimes you may not always agree with their opinion. So I always encourage people to, get a second opinion too. Yeah, but I have found, like, if you're, do I really want to say this? Let me make it. It's really hard to work on a underlying mental health issue if you're actively using, it's like you're treating it, right? Like almost like putting out the fire constantly, but like you're not really healing from it.
Yeah.
It's always going to still kind of be there.
I can completely relate, because the very first time I I made an attempt at recovery. I got a therapist because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. And I met the therapist. I showed up on time, but I may not have been using my drug of choice, but I found I wasn't being honest about using other things. That transference of addictions. And so I didn't know it at the time because I thought that I was helping myself, but really I was, it's kind of like how you go to a place and sanitize, your hands are dirty, and you sanitize your hands, you're just sanitizing over the dirt. It's not really like doing anything for. Yeah. So.
One other thing that kind of comes to mind, I think, like if somebody's kind of also like in that place of not knowing if they need it or not, I think if you're like doing a mental health plan or you're like in recovery and you're kind of doing the things and you're still kind of struggling, then I think that's a sign that maybe there's something else going on. So whether it's your mental health, but you're still drinking, and that's just like one idea. But I think I know for me, I ended up going on antidepressants because I was doing all the things and I still couldn't get out of bed. And I still, things were just a lot more difficult than they needed to be.
Yes. Right. Yes. Yeah. And I even myself, I'll just say, like, I, in sobriety and recovery, like for a while, I was personally resistant towards going on medication myself, because I was scared. I was scared of the side effects. I was scared. What did that mean for my sobriety? Blah, 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 blah. I had heard, I had heard. Yes. And I just realized, for me, like, I need outside help, and that's something we have to do. We have to do with our medical providers, and like, I just know for me, like, that has been it's so important to my sanity and recovery. Like, right, like it's a part of my outside help program. And so, I don't have any shame about it anymore. Well, clearly I do have a little, because I'm like not really wanting to talk about it, but that it's interesting. Like, it's like a bad thing to take. I don't know. I feel like, for me, I don't think that of other people, but I'm scared to like disclose, yes, I take medication for mental health, but I just did.
We have a couple questions from our viewing audience. And the first one,
Molly seems like it might be on topic a little more. Oh, the second one.
Yeah, I think that they're both on topic.
Okay.
For the first question, I'm wondering if you could just briefly kind of share. Can you hear about your experience teaching at SFSU?
Oh, sure. So,
can you do me a favor, because is that the screen name? I don't want to butcher it, but I also want to acknowledge.
Oh, for Jorge?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Oh, yes. So that's Jorge, who is kind of like my Eskimo into recovery. Not to break their anonymity, but I just did kind of. But so my teaching experience. Oh, and I think the MX is to be gender neutral. That's referring to their screen name. And so I taught actually in the same program that I went through, and I taught sexuality counseling, which was an amazing class to teach. And so, there's a lot of, sexuality is a big section in mental health, actually. And sex is a lot of sex is in our minds. And some of it is strictly like physiological. But yeah, I taught that for a couple of years, and I was working, 40 hours and doing all this other stuff on top of that. So I'm no longer teaching because it was a lot. I have so much respect for any teacher because, you teach a class and then you grade papers for hours and hours and hours and plan for the next class. So, it was a really great experience, though.
And now we have a question from Molly.
And Molly asks, what would you tell someone who doesn't believe in therapy or thinks they can manage all their problems themselves?
Again, I go back to acceptance. And I say that because I have tried to exert my will on many people, even professionally, no, I think you really need to do this. And I find that is not effective. It's really not. Sometimes I think directive, action is warranted. But if somebody is resistant or doesn't believe in something, I don't think that trying to prove something to them or force something down their throat is effective. There's this concept called rolling with resistance in what's called motivational interviewing. And this whole, practice, the skill that a lot of helping professionals do is they listen for somebody that they're working with. They listen for somebody talking about a change they may want to make in their life. Now, this person may not say explicitly, I want to change my substance use, but they may say oh, every time I use, this happens. Every time, I do this happens, etc. And so somebody who's, practicing MI, motivational interviewing, is going to work with the resistance that person might be expressing, really accept it, say that really makes sense. This sounds like this is, they might even say it sounds like this is really actually working for you. They may use some, I wouldn't say reverse psychology, but, really, sometimes even humor, works if it's used correctly, not laughing at somebody, but letting somebody know you're compassionate to where they're at.
Hey, Zachary. So obviously you're in therapy for yourself.
Yeah.
Let's talk about advocacy, because I think what I find, especially for me, navigating in the beginning when I didn't have the resources, because it's clear therapy a lot of times is for folks who are privileged,
Mm-hmm.
or that's the idea. Mm-hmm. How do you advocate? How do you make sure that you get what you need? Because obviously, not every therapist is going to work for every person. And I guess what's unfortunate, and when you're assigned a therapist, how do you work that out?
Mm. It's really, yeah, you're speaking to something that I feel like I'm currently working on with where I work, and I won't say where it is, but part of again, like going back to kind of we have this broken system where mental health has been this privileged service, and even in public health, right? Where because the people who are in the roles as helping professionals are oftentimes people who grew up with privilege. They are white, they grew up, with more financial resources, et cetera, et cetera. And so then there's a real lack of representation in terms of people of color in those helping professions. And it's extremely unbalanced because you have clients that may want to come in and speak with somebody who understands their experience, right? Like who really can understand, you know, and so I think that is something that the system is systemic, and that the system, people within the system are actively trying to change, right? Like work on making mental health more accessible, meaning in every possible way. From who are the helping professionals to what are the barriers that are preventing the most vulnerable populations from accessing our care. So, advocacy looks like, if you, I'm speaking to my fellow mental health professionals listening, it means like speaking up constantly for those who are not at the table, who cannot speak up, and, advocating for, that your agencies do anti-racism work, that do cultural trainings around sexual orientation and gender identity. There's still a lot of uninformed people in the helping professions, and that's alarming because they're supposed to be the ones that know. So, yeah.
Definitely. I had a question for you around, like I think in particular, one of the things I experienced with my therapist. So one, I think it's probably interesting to try to balance that idea of recovery, the kind of anonymity spaces of being in that, and then also the mental health. Seems like there's probably a lot of room for like kind of this overlapping weird thing to kind of manage, I think. But also I think in COVID times in particular, I was watching couples therapy, but I was also with my own therapist, in shelter in place, I learned that he had a child. I learned it seemed like because of like shelter in place, a lot of therapists were put into like this different environment. And so it was really hard. Like they kind of almost became vulnerable. There were pieces of themselves that became known, that it seemed like that would be a different thing to or maybe a challenging thing. Have you experienced that?
Yeah.
So about it.
Yeah, certainly. So like right now, I'm at home, and I have, been at home a lot this last year, working from home, doing therapy on Zoom, which I was never trained to do, like therapy in that way. I don't think a lot of us were. So it was this real quick pivot to this new format, and then also like letting clients into our homes, into our lives in this way where, historically in therapy, it's like we don't really know a lot about our therapists. There's kind of this like, they're like a therapist, and we don't really ask them a lot of questions. Although I work a little differently. Like I work from a very relational place. And so I think self-disclosure sometimes is a very appropriate intervention. And I think it helps, if somebody asks me a question and I feel like it's clinically helpful, then I'm totally, but it's something even possibly personal, I'm going to probably answer that in a way that I find is helpful and still boundary, but I think it's a really interesting thing that you've even experienced, Bonnie, with this whole change. So,
And I think for like me as a client, I don't think it really changed it that much. If anything, I maybe felt a little closer because I'd always kind of had these wonders and things like that. And so it kind of felt like another level to kind of deepen our relationship because I've been with him for like 5 years. So
So Zachary, I have a question for you, Zachary.
Yes.
Who is this LayBelline that I had to read off in your bio, and how has she helped you with your recovery and mental health?
It's a great question. So LayBelline is my drag persona, and that name actually was given to me by someone named Star, who I met in San Francisco in 2006, actually at the Castro Country Club behind the old bar that used to be in the front room. And I had been doing drag before that, but I actually was going by a different name, actually my Radical Fairy name, which I won't go into that right now, but
another show, huh?
That's another show. But it was clear to me that I needed a different name because that name was really, it's like a spiritual name and different. And I had used that name a couple times here in the city, and people kind of like tossed it around, made fun of it. And it was like, oh yeah, I need a different name, like, because that's like a sacred name for me. So I was given the name LayBelline. It just felt perfect. And where it kind of comes from is like, when I, in my early 20s, I used to just love going down to Union Square with my student financial aid and and going shopping. And, I'd go to some of the nice stores and buy things, and then walk around with all the bags, just feeling so powerful. And so this queen said, "You're such a label whore. That's what your name is, LayBelline." And I was like,
LayBelline.
LayBelline. I was like, that's perfect. So LayBelline, bottom line has been an opportunity for me to be of service. It has been a vehicle for me to be of service in a fun way, in a way that also fulfills this like creative outlet for me that is well, my relationship has changed with her over the years and with drag. It used to be something I needed constantly for my mental health. And now it's actually different. Like, I need a lot of space in between my performances because they actually really take a lot out of me. And that's just something I've had to honor and realize that, like, it's not that I don't like doing drag. It's just that it affects me differently now, and I don't know what that's about, but I just accept it. So
you've definitely inspired a lot of us up and coming sober queens. So I really appreciate that. So we're kind of towards the end of our conversation. I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts. And you already, I was actually going to ask you, and the question was asked about your relationship to the Castro Country Club, but you've been a really important part of the country club.
Definitely.
So,
and were there some links or something that you wanted to share so folks could connect to either you or some sort of program?
Yeah, there are a couple of resources that I gave before the show. Oh, here's my Instagram. Well, there's two of them, one for me, Zachary, and me, LayBelline. So please feel free to hit me up. And then I gave some resources. One is for SAMHSA, which is it's a federal, substance use and mental health service administration. So this link here is a national hotline that you can call. And so if you don't live, in San Francisco, which people that are listening or watching may not, this is a good resource, a starting point for you to get connected with either mental health and or substance use services. I think another one I put up is SF suicide prevention. Suicide, again, is something that I think is very stigmatized, something I've certainly dealt with. And there's help available. I myself have called suicide prevention hotlines at like 3-4 in the morning, and they have helped me get through. So please call, use these resources. They, they really work. And then I think the next one, what is it? Oh, Queer Life Space. This is an organization here in San Francisco for therapists that are queer identified or are, definitely culturally attuned to working with queer folks. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, and for folks who are just listening, we'll put the links in the description so you can find all of what we're talking about here in the description. Was there anything else? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, I think there was maybe one or two more. There was the intake line for the city community behavioral health services. But you can also go to that if you just Google SFDPH behavioral health. And if you call the number there, it says like access intake line. They also, you will get a therapist that will do kind of like a screening assessment and help get you connected. And if you have private insurance, you can still call, they'll help get you linked. I think that was all of them that I put up. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. So we got off to a rough start, but it's like,
that's okay.
No, exactly. We made it, and those of you who stuck it out with us, we love you.
Yeah.
We just want to remind you that the Castro Country Club is a clean and sober gatherings place for all people and a home for the queer recovery community. Located in the heart of the Castro district of San Francisco, we endeavor to be a space where all can seek wisdom, serenity, courage, and joy. And find more information at castrocountryclub.org.
Tune in every Tuesday at 6 p.m. when we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
And look for at the CCC wherever you listen to podcasts.
And one of the things that we would really love is for you to do like Zachary
Zachary's
did,
a shining example.
and send us a message on our SpeakPipe link, especially for our next week's topic.
I know for our next topic, we're going to be talking about like dealing with recovery during these times of COVID.
Yes. And so we won't have a guest. We're looking to have a great conversation with one another and hopefully you. So
exactly. Leave us voicemails and tell us about your experience.
Exactly.
And you can, let's see, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and follow us. And most important, share this with your friends because you love them.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Take care and have a great week. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Absolutely. Goodbye.
Bye, Zachary. Thank
you. Bye-bye.
Wow.
Did you see that?
Right. A little bit of talking over the music.
Absolutely.
It's a good show.
Yeah.